Our conversation today is with two people who've given us some of the most compelling content ever on Indian television, cinema, and OTT. Sameer Nair, whose work is actually synonymous with our trajectory of consuming TV content, from the formative years in the 90s, to coming of age with afternoon cable TV, to an entirely redefined viewing of primetime television. In 2017, Kumaramangalam Birla called Sameer to take the helm of Applause Entertainment, giving him the chance to actually make and tell stories that he'd always wanted to. Joining Sameer today is Vikramaditya Motwane, who's among the rare auteurs in Hindi cinema today. The two have done some really good work together, a documentary on Indira Gandhi and what is my current favorite show on Netflix, Black Warrant. Join my colleague Rajesh Naidu, me and these gentlemen in a riveting chat that ranges from prisons to potboilers, Gandhis to P.V. Narasimha Rao, the Indian mafia to Amar Chitra Katha, the lesser known film debut of Kishore Kumar and Rabindranath Tagore, and of course, loads of more cinema and content. Hi Sameer, hi Vikram, very warm welcome to the Morning Brief. So glad to have you with us.
Glad to be here.
Good to be here.
Let's start with Black Warrant. It's a remarkable show, and I'm being journalistically objective because I think it's one of the best to have come on an Indian OTT platform in many, many years. Starting with you, Sameer, why Black Warrant? What made you choose the project?
Well, actually, I think it was like almost 3 years ago now, getting to be there in around, I think, May 2022. Vikram and me were talking about Indira's emergency at the time, and he mentioned this book. He mentioned the work that he had done on it. He had done some development, all of that stuff, and he said, would you like to read it? And I said, yes, of course. So he sent us material to read, which we read and were immediately sort of taken into it. And I think we started from there, and then we sort of progressed from there. And, it had, if you read the book versus what you see on the show, that is quite the journey and quite, it's quite distinctive in that sense. But I think that's what filmmaking is about. But it sounded, I really like this contemporary history thing. We do a lot of it in any case. So this seemed to be just the right thing to do. Plus, we were waiting to work with him. So this seemed to be the right opportunity.
Right. Vikram, going even sort of back from there, how did it really start? Because what I heard is Josie Joseph, who's this great investigative journalist, he came to you with a creative pitch, which was based on tons of research on what he called almost all the jail manuals that were ever printed and Tihar. And he said you were sold in the first probably 15-20 minutes. How was that?
It was the book more than anything else. I think that Josie reached out to me, which in itself was a pretty wild kind of call out of the blue, and said that there's this wonderful book that I've got, which is written by Sunil Gupta, Sunetra Chaudhary. Would you be interested in sort of reading it? And I did, and I was like, okay, immediately this can be like a really this could potentially make a really great series. There's so much of that perfect balance of the real and the real, where it's almost like you read this and this can't possibly be true. So it had that masala element to it, which is for all those things, whether it's the Rangabilla hanging or meeting Charles Sobrach for the very first time. All those scenes are like, these are all true scenes, but they're such great, so rich with drama. So it was that, and I think the purpose that Sunil Gupta has in the jail. Those two things are so, in the book, we were like, okay, this must be done.
Also, when you adapt a literary book, what aspects you keep in mind? Like one has to leave this and focus more. So what were the things that you kept in mind when?
You just keep drama in mind, honestly. At the end of the day, if the material is strong enough, you have to sort of do certain things to make. So for example, okay, Sunil needs the book is a little bit more academic when it comes to the fact that here's Sunil and this is what happened to him and he's telling it from his lens.
Yeah.
But if you're going to dive into his life, who are the people that are going to be around him? Who are his co-conspirators? Who are his antagonists?
Right.
Who is the villain of the story? What's going on in those things? So you have to start creating those characters, bit by understanding who serves what purpose in the story as vis-a-vis Sunil's perspective.
Right.
But otherwise, honestly, it's just always drama is like the overall. Which I've been trying to tell all the other creators and directors. कि, हाँ, ठीक है. Yes, we will not go too far away from the truth, but let's keep it dramatic.
Right. One thing we have observed quite closely is this idea of geography. In your films, it's very sharply defined. When we talk about Lootera, when we talk about a film like Trapped, or when we talk about a film like Udaan, I mean, the geography governs the whole behavioral pattern of characters. We can't imagine, okay, this is not this can't happen anywhere. It can happen there only. So when you set out to write a film, how much of the role of geography, you bear in mind and and write, or it's like the story comes first and then you place the story in a geography.
Story comes first normally. In the case of Udaan, for example, I wrote it for Delhi, and then Delhi and its satellite towns. And then Imtiaz Ali read the script and says, "No, just go to Jamshedpur because it's I grew up over there, and I'm reading your script and everything I'm seeing Jamshedpur in the." So I took a train, stayed with his parents, and I'm like, "Yeah, he's right." So that was an easy adapt when it came to the geography of it. In the case of Black Warrant specifically, because it's about the jail, so I think the challenge and the excitement of that geography ends up becoming that how do you create a compelling, entertaining, interesting series within the confines of the walls, not make it feel too claustrophobic, still get a sense of the Delhi outside without really getting a sense of the Delhi outside. So that was an interesting challenge that that we set ourselves up for. So
Right. And it doesn't look like that cinematic jail, where we have grown up watching those.
those cinematic jails don't exist in India. This is the first lesson number one happened, and because first thing we're like, yeah, we're reading jails, and I'm like, oh, cool, we'll be like, corridors and that kind of stuff. And they're like, hi, Indian jail isn't hote. Indian jails are very boring. They have just courtyards and outdoor spaces, and that's it. So, oh, okay, fine. So we had to kind of like reset our entire sort of thought system.
Right. Samir, in the case of this whole, there's this trend of factual entertainment. I mean, and it's almost like a hallmark of your production houses where we see a lot of factual entertainment, right, a scam, and then we have this. Is it do you think it's a trend among audience to, where there is a lot of interest towards that, like, a depiction of old, old or contemporary history? That's why, or it's something that's your personal call that you are attracted to those kind of narratives, and as you rightly said, history is not well captured.
I think it's a combination of both. I think when we first did Scam, for example, so at that time I remember we were told that this is a story from 1991. It came out in 2020, so it's like 31 or 29, 30 years ago. And who's going to be interested in watching it? And like, why would anyone be interested in this piece of information? Later, of course, as it turned out, everyone was deeply interested in that piece of information. So the way we see it is that, there are a lot of interesting stories in contemporary history. Often these things, the word history tends to date it, but these are always young adult stories because the time of the story being told, those people were young. Like we refer to Black Warrant as a young adult workplace drama. It just so happens that the workplace is Tihad. Otherwise, it is young adults in a workplace, right? So even Scam was a young adult. He was a young Harshad Mehta doing what he was doing. So I think that history is really interesting. And as this whole streaming business has expanded, as this whole, we become like 800 million people are connected now. So I think people are very hungry for stories in which they see themselves, or at least want to see themselves. So it doesn't become history. And there are so many stories to be told. Actually, India has not been well documented in that sense. Like unlike the US, our post-independent history is almost zero.
There are many stories to be told, and we'll sort of come to that. But I wanted to take you back a little bit to your, your career trajectory. It is not only the trajectory of television, the evolution of television, but also how we consumed entertainment. Right from your association, right from bringing, a street hawk. And and then going to Bold and the Beautiful and Santa Barbara, which was our sort of coming of age content, and then building and then of course KBC and Kyunki Sasbi, and then building all Balaji with Ekta Kapoor, and then finally Applause. You're the best person to ask this question. What are the three ways you think in which television viewing, and I'm including OTT in this, has changed over the years?
Well, three is actually a good number. So there was the period before satellite TV. So before satellite TV, there was that whole Doordarshan where you may have seen Street Hawk, and it was the single television home, the single channel, and if a political leader died, you used to have 3 days of mourning,
Yeah.
which means everything went off. And you saw the one Hindi movie and the one song compilation show. So that was one world. We grew up in that, We grew up in that world. I grew up in that world.
Yeah, even I grew up.
And then came satellite TV. So when satellite TV happened, suddenly we went from one TV to one channel to 100 channels, and all the genres came. You had the music channels, you had movie channels, entertainment, all of that. So that was that next big surge, which went on for quite a long time, because that went then from 1990 to say 2015. And now streaming has arrived. So the main thing what streaming has done is that television is linear. So it's time bound, it's like, that's why, KBC was tonight at 9. No baj gaye kya. That was the key message.
And Kyunki at 10:30.
And Kyunki at 10:30 and all. It was always messaging to time. If you missed it tonight, it's gone. You can't see it tomorrow because it's a new episode. Streaming now is going nowhere. So it's there forever, which is why also when you're making anything, you make it with that much more care, because audiences can always go back, pause, rewind, take a screenshot and put it out and tell you, what is this, right? And also what streaming does is that streaming now allows you to see it whenever you want to. So like when my mother discovered streaming, when we, got the Hotstar connection and set it up in the house, she told me that one day, she said, "Ye bada amazing hai. When I put it on the next day, it tells me where I stopped." We take it so much for granted, right?
Yeah.
Resume watching.
Yeah.
But resume watching is revolutionary.
Yeah.
You could never do that in TV, unless you have that set-top box or Tata Sky, but even that doesn't remember.
Right.
It doesn't remember. You can pause it, but you got to keep watching. You switch the channel, is gone. So resume watching is an amazing thing. And then along with that, streaming brought along, you may also like. Right, which is again something that people take lightly, but it's a big deal. When Netflix says you may also like, it means that you like this law show, here are 50 more. And these are, and you can see multiple languages next to each other. So like you've made Black Warrant now, and we've put it out there. Right next to that, there will be the Roshans, which will show up on Netflix. There will be the Malayalam movie that comes there. It's all in the same place, all the international content. TV never allowed all that. So I think in that sense, audiences have grown up with this, and they've also become used to it. So now if you take an audience back to a single TV channel universe, that's not acceptable. If you take you back to a linear TV channel, it's not acceptable. And now here we are in streaming with all the crowd and distraction and so much noise happening. So it's good, I think.
So you spoke about the viewer who can go back and watch this, but there's also the viewer who is watching two screens at the same time. There's this whole concept of primary and secondary screen. And then there are several other things like political, the landscape, the environment that we are in today. How much more difficult is it to choose content that will click, and what are the things in your mind? For example, how did you? So you spoke about why you thought the Tihar jail thing would work, because it's a workplace thing for you. But you've also done Indira's Emergency, which a lot of Gen Z people wouldn't even know about. So when you make those decisions, and there's a question to both of you, what clicks in your mind to say that this might work?
See, for me, when he sent me Indira's Emergency as 3 episodes as a work in progress, and he said, take a look at this, and I watched it. I watched all 3 episodes in that same afternoon. I called him the same evening and I said, wonderful, So I think, again, it comes back to being contemporary history. It's a piece of information that is of interest to people, right? At the time, the son was the young adult, right? You could call him that. And it's a piece of history that your parents have been through. Many people have lived through. You know about it.
Yeah.
You've heard about it. You don't know what the detail is. And I think that kind of thing, I think sometimes we treat our audiences a little badly. We just assume that they're all stupid and they want mindless entertainment. You'd be surprised how smart people are. Another thing that oftentimes people, as a filmmaker, you're involved in making something, you consume 2 years of your life making it. Right? You're completely tunnel vision, that's what you're doing. An audience in the same time is watching 200 shows, right? And movies. They are extremely no wide lens about this. So by the time your material comes out, they've seen a lot of stuff. You know, I've had many examples of making something very, very unique to be told by my driver, ये तो देखा है, तो आया है उसमें, you know, kind of thing. And you're like, what? So,
But Vikram, is there a growing divergence in your thought process of what would work in the theaters versus what would work in OTTs? Is there completely different lines of thought when you choose content?
There's a yes and no. So you can't, for example, you know that you cannot do series in the theater, right? So that's already a kind of given in the fact that series have to be made for streaming. There are certain original movies that I think it's more in terms of the fact that there are original movies that cannot work in the theater but can work on OTT, but I don't think that the reverse applies. Anything that works in the theater also works on OTT. If you look at the growth that's actually happening, I think the largest number of subscribers that come to the streaming channels come for movies. They come for some series, but they do come for when the cinematic movies are now on streaming, is when they get the biggest bumps to kind of come in. So yeah, I think it's some films cannot be theatrical, and maybe that's because you use a certain kind of language or a certain kind of tonal approach or a certain kind of violence or whatever it is, which is allowed on streaming, or you just feel that the audience that is going to watch this movie will probably not be there in the movie theater. But even that, I'm also like kind of like, I think anything works better in a movie theater just by you know the fact that it's actually on a larger screen with better sound and all that sort of stuff. And automatically I would love to show, you know, like screen Black Warrant for like go into the day in a theater and binge it. Yeah, why not? It'll be great. You know what I mean? Like that.
That may be a future trend also. We don't.
It may not be. You know, it's a great. Why not? Yeah. So.
But do you think streamers increasingly it's becoming more of the established filmmaker doing their work there, because theatricals theatrical, as you know, there's a lot of uncertainty that's increasing. So how do you look at it? It's becoming a good space for established filmmakers, or a lot needs to be done?
It's a great space for look. Streaming has been very good to me. So personally, if I have to say honestly, from my perspective, it's been great for me. I've done so far now 3 series and 2 movies, which have actually been all in the streaming space since 2018. I haven't done anything theatrical. Right. So it's been wonderful that way. I think theatrical is also very robust depending on the kind of film you make. It's that whole concern that we had post-match, will the audiences come back? I think that concern is gone. They are coming back as long as there's a certain excitement for them to go and see a film. If they're excited enough to go and drive to movie theater and buy a movie ticket and and go and sit down in that theater.
Yeah, even a film like Marco, Malayalam films. I mean, there was no promotion and marketing, and it's made 100 crore. I mean,
but that's the same thing happened with Rishabh Shetty's film, Kantara, which was like 2 years ago. Same thing, it came out of the blue. And so if the audience is excited to go see something and the word of mouth is strong,
right,
they will 100% go. No system is perfect.
Right.
I feel that there is no system is perfect. Yes, theatrical. I personally feel that there is a problem with the movie going experience. It's not a perfect experience. You have to drive to get there. Parking is a problem. You have overpriced popcorn. The interval is forced down your throat whether you like it or not. There's 30 minutes of ads all the kind of time. It's not the most pleasant experience in the world. We have to sort of like look at how to make that pleasant. Yes, when the movie's on, it's great, but everything else around it can be putting off for people to actually want to, अरे यार वापस जाना पड़ेगा, वापस वो 30 ad देखने पड़ेंगे गंदे switch वाले. You know what I mean? So that really turns, I know it does turn a lot of people off. Am I willing to go there to see every movie in the movie theater? No. But am I willing to pay good money to go see a movie in the IMAX because it's going to blow my mind? 100%. I will ignore all the ads with my headphones on to be able to experience, that in a movie theater. I think on the streaming front, again, I think there's a little bit of, it's in a state of not flux, but I think they're also because they're still in a growth phase.
But do you think is the challenge is more like, for example, Sameer's case, it's a very interesting model. He takes the whole, the risk and makes the film. So but it's not followed by most production houses. So you think the challenge is there on the people who greenlead projects, or it's more of like the things are not like done?
No, 100%. I mean, I think I don't know why more people don't have the applause model. I think it's a fantastic model because you're not seeing it from end result perspective, the entire fact of, oh, we think the audiences will like this, therefore we won't make it. It's like, we like it first of all, and we think this will really sort of like work, so let's go make it. And you take a risk on it.
Yeah.
But I think we should step back a bit and talk about the applause model a little more, because a lot of our viewers may not even be aware, of the stuff that you're doing. First of all, why did you choose this model? Creating a product and then taking it to the platforms instead of,
So there are 2, 3 things. One is, like I wanted to do this for a long time. So in 1999, I had spent about 5, 6 years in Star already, and I was thinking I'd leave Star, and that I would go and create a sort of a film studio, and I'd get like-minded directors. You were quite young at the time, but others, and get people together and then say that this is what we're going to do and all of that. So I had some grand plans about that. But then, life had different plans. So I think everyone in Star got fired, and then I got promoted, and then we went on and did KBC and Kyunki, and then it went off into a direction.
oh, it's that old, that ambition and dream.
This theory. So I thought that I should do something like Amblin, like something like that. So now, finally, in 2017, when I got this opportunity, I met Mr. Birla, and he asked me in a conversation. I had known him for some time. He said, "So, like, what do you want to do?" So I said that I want to make content and license it. That's the plan. So he remarkably said, "Yeah, good. Tell me when you can start." So then it became suddenly a real thing. So I had to think it through after that. That abhi bol diya hai, karna bhi padega. The good thing that happened is that the only one sort of punt we had. Honestly, Applause is supposed to be a traditional movie studio. But when we started out, I think making movies was something that was not really, no one wanted to touch straight away. So I said that let's make series, because the whole streaming market is going to grow. Netflix was built in the US on the back of acquired content from ABC, NBC, CBS, right? That content existed. HBO content existed. So they were able to acquire it and redistribute it. They're actually a distributor. Then later they went on into original content.
Yeah.
In India, when you arrive, there's nothing to acquire. There are 4 main players. They've got their own TV channels. They've got their own streaming services. They're not going to give you anything. There's nothing ready. Then we don't even make premium TV. So the idea was that there is going to be a requirement for this, and we can actually be a good complementary. It's not going to happen any faster. It's the process is the process. So this idea was that if we can, sort of do it in this manner and take this risk and get out there and make good quality product, maybe they'll buy it. Maybe they'll take it. It becomes like, you've made it, you take a look at it, you like it, you take it. And we were fortunate that it did sort of play out in that manner. What we thought would happen. So in a sense, you are taking risk, but the risk is also, it's like a movie. When you make a movie, you don't know what the outcome in the theater is going to be. But you're still making a good movie because you still think you're going to entertain audiences. You still think you'll sell streaming rights. You still think it'll do well on TV. It's a way of doing it. And so that's what we started doing. We started making series, and we did quite a few of them, and we've done quite a few. We've done formats, we've done book adaptations, we've done originals. We made Andekhi, we made Criminal Justice, we made Scam. We did Tanav. So all sorts of things. And we've done quite a few series in that manner, and the market is there for it. Currently we're making Gandhi. So in all of these things. So I mean,
So
sorry.
just another sort of a blunt question. I mean, the friends in the industry that I speak to sometimes say that the involvement and not interference maybe from the platforms is so much that start to finish of the project, it becomes an entirely different project. Did you sort of preempt that and choose this model that you don't want?
See, actually, I wanted to do, as I told you, I wanted to make Amblin, so I made Applause. In that, I want to be part of this creative process, right? We want to make this. So we are not actually ever in conflict with our partners. So I used to be in the platform side. So I have greenlit enough number of shows in my life, right? So I have no actually any experience of working with a platform that it's a tedious process. So therefore, let's do this.
Yes.
This is what I wanted to do. I got the opportunity to do it. Mr. Birla is a wonderful patron. See, this business of ours requires patrons, right? It's not finance, right? You need patrons. You need people who can appreciate art, who understand, what art is, and that things can go wrong, right? It's not exactly, because as I was telling you that, like unlike any other industrial product, it's not the same thing. Each time you do something, it's brand new.
Right.
Each time the generic process is the same,
Right.
but the individual journey is different.
Right.
The outcome is different.
Right.
The reactions are different.
Right.
So you got to have more than just the stomach for it or the wallet for it, you must have the heart for it.
Right.
Things can go wrong. This could go the other way.
Right.
Right? You make this beautiful thing and say, I don't get it. Oh God. Oh God.
But how challenging is it to sell it, the economics of it, to convince what you spent, where you spent, and why did you do it at a certain scale and not this?
And just to add to what he, asked, it's like when you compare with, most other production houses, they follow, they rope in a studio or other funders, and then they're thinking. So when you do it, you want to have creative control. Is the IP thing, ownership of IP, that's also a driving factor when you do it on your own? And
Actually, see, creative control to kuch hai nahi. We have got creative collaboration. No? All of this is a collaborative art form.
Right.
Ownership of IP, in this case, we are co-owners.
Yeah.
He is a co-producer. Right? So he is, in a sense, he is our partner in this, in every sense of the way. Right?
Right.
So I don't think that's a driving factor.
Right.
That, ki ye karenge.
Right.
Many years back, somebody approached me saying that, but whatever it is, मैं picture बनाऊंगा, but I want to own the IP. I said, why don't you make the IP first? Because IP is something that should be worth owning. Right? So you have to make something worth owning to own it. Otherwise, what is the definition of ownership? Like I own this, but kya hai wo? So I don't think it's that.
Yeah.
I think the idea is to tell stories because it's such a vibrant market. There is so much opportunity.
Right.
Like 2 years back, we made this really nice Tamil film called Porthodil. It's a debutant director. He had been living with that story for 8 years. Finally, we met and we said, okay, COVID mein green light kar diya. He went and made the movie. It's your most basic generic two buddy cops finding a serial killer. It's as simple as that. You must have seen this story 100 times. It's all in the telling.
Right.
We made it for some 8 crores. And the night at the premiere, my co-producers are telling me, I will tell you, we should have never released this. It's going to be a big flop. And we should have put it straight to the platform. So I said, this is hardly the time to be telling me this. Like we've just come from the premiere now.
Right.
But that movie broke out and it went on to do some 40, 50 crores of box office. And in fact, we started with some 100 screens. It went on to about 600 screens. And the theaters were themselves doing some 15 shows a day, including 11 o'clock, 11:30, 12, 12:30. And it's all word of mouth. So the thing what happens is that there are audiences out there. They want to see stuff. I think that's the excitement.
Right.
And that's a big decision to take. I've spent years in television doing this.
Right.
Taking that right call. Let's make this show. Sounds like a good idea. Go ahead and do it. It's a trick one. So it's a difficult business. This is a difficult business.
Vikram, talk about Andolan, and I'd like to start with the name. It's got a really interesting story, your personal, your familial history, and your cinematic history, and India's history as well. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
So Andolan, my family, which there was this company called Chicago Radio, which if you look at any of the old sort of like images of Gandhiji or Nehru, there's always that Chicago Radio at the bottom. So they were in public broadcast systems. What I didn't know, which I only got to know much later, is that at one point in time, my grandfather was very, very passionate about movies, and he had got into. So I eventually inherited the box of all his books, and half of those books were about how to learn filmmaking. So I said, "Kya baat hai?" It was quite. And of course, I never met him. He passed away before I was born. And my grandmom would keep telling me, first of all, that because I started working when I was 17, and she said, so when you're stopping this hobby and starting some real work? I'm like, hobby means I work 16 hours a day. It's hardly a hobby. And at the same time, she's telling me, your grandfather was also into filmmaking. So I said, chalo, this is... so he produced a film called Andolan. The company produced it. So this Kishore Kumar's debut. It came out, it was about the freedom struggle. And then it came out. I don't think it did very well. It wasn't received very well because I think people, from what I hear, it was too close to the actual freedom struggle for people to relive it in that sort of way. I mean, it's like making a film on COVID right now. It's like, yeah, it's just happened.
Yeah.
So it didn't happen, and then that was the only film the family ever made, and then that was that. And they just left it, and it sort of like went there until I kind of like discovered the fact that, oh, this has happened because family finally told me, and then I saw the film, and then I, of course, inherited the original script of the film and the photo sets and all that kind of stuff. So somewhere at the company name, once I once Phantom disbanded and he said, "Chalo, if to start a new company," it was Atul Sabharwal's idea actually, where he said, "Why don't you just call it Andolan?" And it just worked really well. It's the right kind of name where if you want to start a revolution, might as well.
Also, interesting information nugget. It has that famous iconic scene of Rabindranath Tagore.
Rabindranath Tagore narrating narrating the national anthem is probably so that I believe a lot of that was exactly what my grandfather was doing. He was very into documentary filmmaking, and I believe my family used to have the rights to record all the AICC sessions, from the 30s onwards. So I've just actually last month been handed down a bunch of like these digibetas, which my uncles, as people get older, they start to keep calling me when they discover all this, photographs in media and stuff. They're like, "Yeah, I have something, so come and take it." So 6 digibetas, I'm looking through, and it's actually like, oh, it's Vallabhbhai Patel's funeral, and it's this and it's that, and all these kind of like things. So I've given it to the Film Heritage Foundation. So Shivi is currently going through it to see what exists in all those kind of tape. So I think a lot of that footage made its way into Andolan actually. So there's a lot of like real documentary footage that's actually in the film. So that's the long and short of it.
But coming to where Andolan stands now and what it stands for, if you were to give me this in one line, what would it really be?
Andolan stands at this point in time to service my urges, I guess. Other than that, no, there's no sort of like, there's no mission statement. There's none of that kind of stuff. I think I just started the company to be able to sort of like, I've always produced my own material, films or series or whatever. Right from Udaan, which was Anurag was the producer, but he's like, you co-produce it yourself. And then through the Phantom years and right now, it's just something that I've done. I'm comfortable doing it, and people are comfortable allowing me to do it because it's like, okay, they'll bring it in, they'll bring a good product in. So it's that, and I think it's just like I'm saying, there's no mission statement at this point in time. I think I'm in a place where whatever is exciting for me, I'll sort of like do it. Hopefully, build it up into a place where one can produce movies and series and stuff that will be excellent and that will sort of like achieve and punch above their weight.
So where I'm coming from is, there are very few people in the industry. I mean, there are, but you support young artists and filmmakers a lot in terms of financing them as well, be it short films, etc. Also, I mean, I just want to understand how important is it, especially in this industry, not the regional ones, which we'll come to later. How important is it to build these little ecosystems? You've spoken about the death of the indie films. How important is it to build these ecosystems?
I think it's essential. Where are the new filmmakers coming from? Where are they getting their chances to do it? The last generation of filmmakers that had a chance of making films, and I'm saying this is like 10 years ago, where you had to make a movie only for the movie theater. You had no other option, and that was in a way good and in a way bad, in the sense that the film had to succeed, but that also sort of like meant that everybody had to go to the theater to watch a movie. Changing that has changed a little bit of the dynamic from an audience perspective, which is great for the audience, but sometimes for the filmmakers, like, so the indie film especially is the one that suffers the most, because where it's like na ghar ka na ghar ka, like where do you go see it? The fact that 10 years ago you had to go to a movie theater to see Masan, to see Court, to see Newton, to see any of those movies, Urta Punjab, any movie that would have had to sort of be there, you had to go to a movie theater. You had no other option. Changing that has also, what it's done is that it's made the theaters say, oh, people will eventually watch this on digital, and the digital people to say that but people are not coming to watch these movies here, they're coming to watch something else over here. And they're both true. Both those statements are true. So where does the indie film kind of go? So unless you end up getting supreme success at a festival, which then allows you to have a theatrical run, or you're backed by very, very strong distribution. In this case, Vinod Chopra doing 12 Fail or Kiran Rao's Lapata Ladies. There's a strong distribution backing you where you can end up sort of like doing it. Besides that, what happens to the other indie who cannot guarantee? See, indie films will need time in the movie theaters. They're not opening weekend. They need 2 weeks at least to be able to have people listen to, to hear the word of mouth and kind of come back. So, which is why in Black Warrant, I was pretty certain right in the beginning, like to try this sort of showrunner director thing, because I'm like, okay, here's a series where one can do it. It's because it's you're limited in your number of locations. It makes it easier to be able to budget according to the fact that, okay, we can allow multiple directors to come in and do their episodes without having to go completely crazy.
I think
Saying,
5 directors.
in total, yeah. So that allowed it. Because I think we need to figure out this system of showrunner director thing. There's a reason it works in the States. It's a very robust system. It brings new talent out. It's great for showrunners and for production companies because you can be quicker in the turnarounds. But no one's doing it here, and I just feel that because in the movies, if new directors are not getting a chance, then one must sort of have them get a chance. In a series like Black Warrant. And now that we've seen that it's succeeded, that there is where they're getting a chance to show their voice and also sort of like do it, but also it feels like a consistent series. So to do that more often, but also I think just from a short film perspective, a lot of guys, a lot of there's very, very talented filmmakers out there who tend to struggle a little bit to kind of get their stories out. And if I can, then I do whatever I can.
Do you think right films are not reaching, right audiences because exhibitors they themselves don't know, how much time they should give a film space in a cinema?
So I think, I mean, on a sheer number of screens number, we're underserving our audience in a certain sort of sense. We've got maybe 10,000 screens for an audience of 1+ billion people, whereas if you look at the US, it's 30,000 screens for 300 million people. Your ratios are much higher, in the US, for example. So films are allowed to stay in the theaters for longer. Here, what happens, we're making so many films in so many languages. So even if a film is succeeding, the fact that a big film is coming that needs a 4,000 screen release or a 5,000 screen release or whatever that sort of number is, you have to give the screens across to them. You have no other option. So even when films have a chance to sort of like breathe and survive, they don't get a chance to really breathe and survive.
Right.
So unfortunately, this is a situation. We don't have the theaters to be able to really have films run for 8-10 weeks. Even your big films, even your big, huge films that are coming and doing all
Right.
that money are going away. They make the money and going in 4-5 weeks because the next big film is coming.
Right.
So,
About the indie film business and all of that, I have just one little story about this.
Yeah.
Is that in '99, when I was in Star Plus, and we just become head of programming and all of that, my colleague came to me, Shailaja Kejriwal, and she said that, boss, while all this is very well and we are doing TV and this and that, I'm telling you, we have to help new filmmakers to thrive and this and that. So I said, Acha, kya karna hai? She said, I am saying that we have got to do, one, you have to just give it to me and this and that. So we agreed to do something called Star Bestsellers. It used to come every weekend,
Yeah.
and it was a 1 hour slot, 45 minutes,
Correct.
and we used to give 5 lakhs. We say, go make your movie in 5 lakhs. 99 May, it was pretty good. I think that spawned a lot of people. No?
Yeah.
Imtiaz Ali, Rajkumar Hirani, Anurag has written, Tigmanshu Dhulia, all sorts of people. And this was, at that time, they were all, as you say, young people coming up wanting to do stuff. And we produced a whole range of them. I think we would have made like some 30, 40, 50 of them, right? And it was just something we used to do. It was no rating.
Yeah.
So like if suppose like Tigmanshu does something, then it's really liked. So the next week's ones will get a better rating. It used to be the following. We never even had a pattern to it. I think we did it for many years. I think 2-3 years. KBC Kyunki aaya, तो then वो थोड़ा wind down हो गया, but we moved it on to Star One.
Right. I remember being completely stunned by Star Bestsellers, but the two I remember are Last Train to Mahakali, which also won awards, and Saap CD, which Irfan just blew everyone away with his act. But let's come to upcoming projects, and you're doing a lot. You're doing documentaries, you're doing animation, a lot of contemporary history. You're doing something on two Gandhis. One is Mahatma Gandhi, the other is Rajiv Gandhi. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about all that?
We have a lot of things in development. So like, for example, we finished shooting Gandhi, the big series based on Ram Guha's books. So we've done shot season 1, which is the period, the Gandhi before India, directed by Hansal. And we are now in that production. We finished shooting Assassins, The Hunt for Rajiv Gandhi's Killers, which is also based on a book, 90 Days, which is the whole, the looking for. So yeah, we are doing, there are other things also happening. We do a lot of stuff. We've got all our subsequent seasons happening. We've got Criminal Justice season 4 that will come. That will be the first of the Indian shows to get to season 4. So we're quite kicked with that, it's like a minor record being set.
Right. Tell us about working with Ram Guha. How was it? I mean, this is a book that was just crying to be, made into something bigger. But how difficult was it to convince him? And
Not difficult. I mean, he is in equal parts a historian and a cricketer. I mean, he's a big, he loves cricket. It turned out he also knew my uncle. So my uncle had told me all sorts of stories about his little, journey in cricket. But when I met Ramgua and took his name, he said, "Oh yes, I remember him. He wasn't very good." So I called my uncle and told him this is what Ram says. But apart from that, I think it was really nice working with him. It just took its time because he was really concerned that he's written this wonderful set of books, and he wasn't sure whether that they'd get ruined in the making. Like I'm sure, and that's fair because he's an author and a historian. He's Gandhi's like most respected, renowned historian and biographer. So it took a little time, but then once he sort of committed to it, then it went along really well. He wanted to do it, so he's been part of it. Actually, we've kept him involved in the entire writing process and given him all the scripts to read. And in many ways, it's quite sweet because he's done so much detailed research on it. And then, no matter how much research you do, finally, a filmmaker is going to breathe life into this, right? So, we literally put words into people's mouths. We're going to be showing it to him in a couple of days. So, I'm really, eager for him to see it really pop out now. That who was that Mohan? Like for us, season 1 is Mohan, right? It's not Gandhi or Mahatma. It's just Mohan because this is the coming of age story.
so, are there 3 seasons on the 3 books?
Well, we want to, so we got to do one, and then
Right. You're also making something on PV Narasimha Rao.
we are working on we are doing the book Halfland, and that we are doing with Prakash Jha and with Allu Arvind, who's our co-producer on it. Actually, they had bought the rights to the book, and he approached us, and but then we thought that the Narasimha Rao story is not something that can be made in Telugu. It's got to be made in Hindi, and it's I mean, all of us today here are because of Narasimha Rao. Yep. We are the absolute children of the liberalization. So it's a story again to be told. We are doing a documentary we've just finished making it. It's called Romancing the Mob. It's about the Hindi film industry's sort of love affair with the mob, right? But it's not done in a manner it's nothing to do, it's just about how the Indian film industry has chosen to show the mafia on screen. Like how have they interpreted it, and what do real people think about it? What do cops think about it? What do lawyers think about it? So like what does Ramu think about his version of storytelling, and what does the cop in question think of Ramu's version of storytelling? It's really interesting. And it's very it's got a lot of flavor, and it's got a bunch of historians and lawyers and legal people talking about it. So I mean, there's good stuff happening.
Is depicting political history, do you have to be cautious about it in these times?
See, I think, what, this is something we've always maintained from the start, that we don't really have any agenda. So if you're a storyteller, then you're telling a story. And you're trying to tell the story as fairly as you possibly can, right? As fairly as you possibly can. So if you don't arrive to the party with an agenda, then you're mostly going to have a pretty good party.
Another superbly interesting project of yours, which is also, I mean, I wonder why it hasn't been done yet, is something that you're doing with Amar Chitra Katha.
Well, we are working on it. We've made a lot of progress on it, but animation is harder. Animation is tougher, and now global animation has become such high quality. Yeah. So it becomes almost like like there is a lot of stuff that India has done, but then after that, it's sort of now TV is dying and streamers are still coping, and animation anyway is supposed to be kiddie, but we want to do it more sort of, adult in that sense. So there are a lot of moving parts in that. But on that, the one good thing that we're trying to do is that we're trying to do the Mahabharata as an international series, like a story which is not necessarily, it's an Indian story, but it's told with an international lens. So like we've got writers from the US to write it in episodes, and we are looking for a US animation director to help us, sort of put it together. So we're trying to do that. Apart from that, we're doing the smaller Amar Chitra Katha, the Jataka tales and the historicals and all of that. They're good to do. And see, animation is really at what scale and at what price and what market there is.
Yeah. 2 last bits. On funding, as an industry, and we've heard about stories of Dharma getting, funding from, in talks with Serum Institute, etc. I'm not talking project-wise, but as an industry and as companies that are making movies, do you think there is need for capital, external capital, primarily for this industry to
You
flourish?
should always have, actually, see, for the creative industry and for the whole industry to be successful and to be vibrant and independent and allow all the stuff that you all have been talking about, what you need is to attract capital, right? And the capital must come not from the eventual buyer. The capital must come from somewhere else so that then
Yeah.
you can sell it to the eventual
Right.
buyer. That's how the ideally an industry works. That's how the movie industry works. So the movie studios historically always raised capital, made the movie, and then released it, and then took advances from distributors and all of that. And that's how it works. So then the whole ecosystem works properly. Does the industry need capital? Of course it does. And it needs to be done in an organized manner. Because what happens is the minute you approach anyone for capital, the industry itself appears so disorganized and so, sort of loosey-goosey and, sort of more small mom and pop shops. And it doesn't feel like, like if you go to a big private equity company and say, will you invest in this? It doesn't really feel like a proposition, right? It's deeply fragmented, it's broken up. So these are challenges that you face. I mean, in the old days, people used to go and raise money from money lenders or from financiers. And at that time, when a movie flopped, there were only two options. Usually it used to be that, okay, another movie is bombed, what are we going to do? So usually the famous question to Raj Kapoor from the Hindujas was, when Mera Naam Joker flopped, तो इससे तो अभी क्या करें? इससे अभी next picture बनाओ. Because that's the way it works, that you got to do the next one then. So yes, this business does need to attract capital, but I think it needs to get that much more professionalized to attract the capital. So the industry really needs that, and it's good that it started. I've heard about Dharma, I've heard about, I think, Excel. We thought there in any case from a long time. So there should be more like this, because then the more money that comes to creation of content, the better the quality of the content can get. But we are in a good place. I think things are looking up now. It's been a bad 2 years, I must say. 22 and 23. 23 and 24 actually have been really tough, between the Hollywood strikes and now the Hollywood fires and all that, the singeing, the valuations, the merger, consolidation happening, not happening. But I think those years are over. 25 started on a good note. So yeah, Black Warrant.
Fantastic. On that note, Samir, Vikram, thank you so much for joining us on the Morning Brief.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.